up, my guys? Welcome to another show, man. It's Monday morning. It's NBA Talk with Jay Money and the Shark. We're in our element. We're trying to get some cash. What's up with you, Shark? Everything cool with you, my brother?
Absolutely. Taking a breath. Beautiful Monday morning here in Pennsylvania, October 24th, 2022. Who thought we'd ever get here? But we are here and we are now. 8-game card. Jay, lead the way and let's get in there.
Yeah, let's get into it, my guys. Definitely plenty to talk about here. Well, we got about seven games we'll break down here, man. Then we're going to try to get some cash, my guys. As always, if you guys can, hit the like button, subscribe. As always, we're here every single day, man. 6-7 days a week. Bring you guys the free picks. At least hit the like button, subscribe, and retweet the show as well. Try to get as many people in here as possible. Sure, let's go. First game up. We're going to the streets of Philadelphia here. We got the 76ers laying 12 points versus the Indiana Pacers here. Sixers have started off the season 0-3. A lot going on. Maybe Doc Rivers pretty close to getting fired. You looking at anything in this game?
No, this game is really not giving me a lot of availability here. And, we said it when we went back to the last game against the Spurs. They had come out in the season with 2 losses against the past 2 Eastern Conference title winners, which did not speak to potential bottom feeder environment. I guess it did, bro, because this was an absolute disgrace of a performance. Came out in the first quarter, which we did suggest would be the look, if anything. Played the first quarter reasonably well and covered it, and then just could not play ball. You come to the other side of this game, Indiana first road game of the year, couple tight ones at home, 1 cover, coming off a win, theoretical letdown. You would like to fade that. You go back to last year, the last matchup within these 2 teams was Philadelphia at home, laying 14.5 points, and they won the game by 13. So I think that tells you how sharp this potentially could be. I will stay the course with the idea Philadelphia is going to win a game this season, guys, and they're going to cover a game. And why wouldn't it come against an Eastern Conference bottom feeder who's off an outright divisional win prior in their first road game? Again, I hate to say you want to wait and see because the whole point of handicapping is forecasting the future before it happens, not waiting to see. But with some teams like this, with this type of turmoil and these players in this roster, and as you mentioned, Doc Rivers, maybe out the door soon, I think we have to wait and see on this one. It's going to be sharp and it's a tough spot.
Yeah, it's a good game there. Philly have started out 3 straight games at the house, 2 versus great teams, right? But then you get smoked by the Spurs in that one. That was inexplicable there, my guys. So be interested to see what happens here in this one. Philly starting out 0-2, 0-3, my guys. Then now this is the last game at the house before they head out. Before they do head out on the road here, man, they do head out on the road, have 3 straight games on deck on the road after this one, my guys. So definitely going to be a tough spot. Toronto, then Chicago. So I'm not laying the points with Philly. Could they get it done? They could, but it's just the whole thing is before the game, should we trust them in the point spread range? Not necessarily, my guys. Like I said about the Hawks and the Warriors yesterday. Some of these teams, it's early season to be laying double digits like they're in mid-season form. So I couldn't talk people off taking the dog here, man. It's not a game that I'm centered on, Shark. Let's go over here to the streets of New York here. We got the Knicks laying 7.5 points versus the Orlando Magic, total sitting at 220 as well here, Shark. Knicks sitting at 1-1 and the Magic sitting at 0-3, Shark. You like anything here?
Oh, this is a tough game. I mean, I think, we talked about this going back to the last game, and I said the Magic are right on the number. And what did they do? They came out and they were another 1-bucket spread. So you have the Magic here 0-3, 3 ATS spots, all within 1 bucket of the spread. I don't know if that's going to change tonight. You go back to last year, the teams did split heads up and ATS, and it was pretty noteworthy, actually. The Knicks were flat out dominant in Orlando, and Orlando was flat out dominant in New York. The road team was 4-0 ATS last year. The line didn't really tell you a good story. The Knicks were laying big figures at home. They were laying 12 and 11.5. Didn't cover either. They came back short in the most recent matchup, 118 to, I believe, 88, an absolute blowout in April down in Orlando. So you get an Orlando revenge game. You get where Orlando traveled well last year. We just said this about the previous matchup, Knicks versus Detroit. The Knicks own Detroit. I faded that incorrectly. So apparently the Knicks are continuing to do what they did last year, in theory, if they're going to dominate Detroit, which would suggest the Magic would come in here and compete. Obviously, Jalen Brunson coming in here, a bit of a rebooted energy in the locker room and the team. It's hard to predict based on that. The line is short, The line is leaning towards Orlando. And again, 4-0 ATS road team last year. Free play here. I am taking Orlando.
Yeah, that's a good point. Be nice if they had Suggs back. This Magic team, this might be what they do this year, Shark. Keep games close, but lose them outright, right? They lost versus the Magic on a 9.5. They end up losing that one by 10. They lost versus the Pistons on a 4-point spread, 3.5, 4-point spread, and they lost that one by 4 as well. Covered the game versus Boston, lost that one by 6. So they lose the games, but they're keeping them right around the number. Could definitely see them losing this game by around 4 to 5 points. It's just what they do. And they're one of the type of teams where if they have the lead in the fourth quarter as well, they kind of give up the lead and like they'll lose the game, but still play a representative game. So I think we might cast a bunch of spreads with the Magic in these type of games here where they won't win the game, but they have enough to keep it close as well. So definitely have the size advantage as well. Be interesting to see. Guys like to turn up in Madison Square Garden. This is Banchero's first game over there. Maybe see the rookie try to turn up over there at Madison Square Garden. His first ever game, NBA game over there. Maybe he tries to turn up. Maybe look at some Banchero props in that one. Cole Anthony as well. He's one of their only guards that they have over there. Cole Anthony, Terrence Ross, the only guard. So the usage rate has to be high for Anthony, my guys. But it just makes sense. Let's go over here. You had something else on that?
Yeah, just one more point. I do want to make this comment. As we went back to last year, we talked about this when we opened the campaign last Tuesday when we did a little bit of a mini recap as to what happened last year just throughout the broadcast. But, you go back to last year, we had 3 or 4 teams that were ATS juggernauts. It was Cleveland early season, and it was Detroit late season. And this is starting to remind me of Detroit. You remember Detroit last year, Jay. They weren't winning a lot of games. They were competing for 3 quarters, giving the game away down the stretch and covering the spread by 1 or 2 buckets every single game. And I just think this early season Magic team might replicate what we saw from the last 25 games of Detroit last year.
Yeah, no, that's a good point there, man. It's definitely a good point. This Magic team will be a sneaky ATS team this year. That's the only way that I would look at them today, my guys. I'd lean Magic there plus the 7.5 points. Maybe some more money come in on the Knicks here. I don't see the Magic being the public side, so I can see the Magic keeping that game close, Shark. Let's go over here to the streets of Miami here, man. We got the Heat land 4 points versus the Toronto Raptors. You'd love to. Now, the Heat were up by like 15 points, 17 points in that game, Shark. You look up, and the Raptors come all the way back. And oh, man, it's tough if you lay 3.5 with the Heat there. They definitely should have covered that. This Heat team is a different team this year, man. They're kind of just getting by offensively. I'm not sure what to do with this Heat team, Char. They've definitely taken the step back from last year. In theory, you'd like to take the Raptors here in the immediate revenge game, but they did have a couple of injuries in that game. Gary Trent Jr. got a little banged up towards the end of that game, and Scotty Barnes left the game with a foot injury. The coach said that he's probably going to miss some time, so they won't. The Raptors team already in super deep. Missing Barnes would definitely hurt tonight, Shark. That's why you see this line open up at 4 here, Shark.
Yeah, and go back to the last couple of seasons where we have found these back-to-backs in the same gym. Of course, it was originally for COVID and travel and safety precautions. Now it just seems to be a thing. I don't entirely know why, but I guess it's just easier for travel, particularly coming across the border and whatnot for the Toronto Raptors. But the sequence of games you do see, oftentimes the line does tell you a damn good story. And it's going to be tight stuff. I mean, we suggested this when we talked about the game 2 nights ago, and I said the last 4 matchups were all within 1 or 2 points of the spread, and we said this game is pretty much a push line. And I mean, if you got 3, you pushed 112 to 109. When the game does push at 3, and I believe that was hovering 3.5 the last game. We were at 3 when we broadcast the show 2 days ago. But when they open it up here at 4, they're telling you a Miami story. And again, this is not necessarily Toronto versus Miami. This is just how books grade these back-to-backs in the same gym between the same teams in the last 3 seasons. The line is on Miami. Miami theoretically should show up. But as we discussed going back to the previous broadcast, 3 years ago when they went to the finals in the bubble and then they came out early season, they did not catch their wind until middle of the year. Mm-hmm. And I do fear that off that deep run, Eastern Conference Finals run, pretty demoralizing loss. Of course, they got hammered in the final game, but it's nonetheless demoralizing for Jimmy Butler, a guy who wants to win a title. He's a very competitive guy. They're not going to necessarily bring it early season here. Toronto is so scrappy. Obviously, Scotty Barnes, you said not in the lineup tonight, but Toronto is just so unbelievably professional, competitive. They don't give away games against the spread. And final point, as we mentioned, yet again the other day when we discussed this game. This is now 3 straight games for Toronto that have all finished right on the number. This is a gamble spot number Miami, but again, this is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, that's a good point. As far as right now, it says Barnes is questionable, guys, but I don't think he'll play. So if you do like Miami, maybe you want to get in on this early. Now, Chris Boucher and Otto Porter, Otto Porter hadn't debuted so far this season for the Raptors. They need more three-point shooters. So that could be somewhat of a difference maker if they get Otto Porter in there. Obviously, he's coming off win the championship with the Warriors, so he could bring some of it over there to the Raptors. Boucher as well. They need those couple guys in there. So if Barnes is out, but they get Otto Porter back, I don't know, man. Raptors off a couple straight losses, as Shark said as well. The Heat, after you take, this is how I look at it psychologically, Shark. When you get so far to the finals, then you know we don't need to turn up early season. Late seasons where we really need to catch our wind and start and get to playing our best of the basketball going into the playoffs. You don't necessarily need to come out firing on all cylinders early in the season. Actually, you don't want to, because you don't want to catch that win early in the season. You want to catch it later in the season. So I always say teams that make it deep into the playoffs, they know early season you kind of just want to take your foot off the gas and rev it up as you get on into the season, my guys. That's how I'm looking at it. I'd still lean Raptors there. You want to wait for the lineups here, but they definitely could have got blown out in that first game, came all the way back to really almost win the game. It just shows you how lackluster the Heat are right now, my guys. Still with lean Raptors, heavily lean to that under, my guys. Let's go over here to the streets of Minnesota here, Sharp. You got the Timberwolves laying 9 points versus the Spurs, my brother.
Well, on a suddenly not so casual Monday morning on the East Coast, the buy hat is engaged. One of my favorite prints here, and we'll take a look at that beautiful cap here as we buy into a Spurs environment on the road, and a lot going on in this game. There's a couple spots on tonight's card where you really find just unbelievably brutal travel for teams, and Minnesota is just that. Minnesota's on a 3rd and 4 back-to-back. I discussed this going back 2 broadcasts ago, and I said Minnesota starts the season with 7 straight games against non-playoff teams. Mm-hmm. I suggested they should go 7-0. They're not 7-0. They're 2-1. They tanked the game in overtime to Utah. And if you really look at what's going on here, I think my thought of they should turn up here to really start their campaign right is actually the opposite. I think I missed that as a narrative point. I think this is more integrating Gobert in there. And also, again, a team that was really competitive against the Grizzlies in the first round of the playoffs. What you just said about Miami is, of course, not directly applicable to the Minnesota Timberwolves, but it is the same general mentality. They're not turned up here early season to blow teams out. They're going to win these games. They're not going to cover double-digit spreads, and you've already seen it numerous times. And, of course, they do come home here in a 3rd and 4 road home back-to-back. One final point on this game. Go back to last year. The Spurs, of course, with a slightly different roster, were 1-0 ATS in the last one game, 127-121. The previous game, Minnesota did cover the spread, but it was because Karl-Anthony Towns went off for 60 points in that game. So out of the last 2 games, the Spurs do compete against the number. The only time that Minnesota gets there is if Karl-Anthony Towns has the game of his life. It's not going to happen tonight. Spurs are scrappy on the road. Line functionality here does not apply. It's very much a scatter plot of chaos with these teams in terms of the number versus the result. You are buying into the narrative, the fatigue, and also just the lackluster start here for Minnesota against the spread on these double-digit numbers. 1 unit, I'm on 10. I wouldn't talk you off 9.5 or 9 now.
Yeah, Chart. I just want to ask you, does it worry you that the Timberwolves have covered 8 of the last 9 versus Spurs and the Spurs bottom tier type of team? This is a team that we're expecting to tank, which all of those teams are playing well right now, the bottom 5 teams other than the Rockets here. Does it worry you that the Spurs are coming in here off 2 straight wins?
No, it doesn't, because I think this cap is very ultra specific to fading Minnesota. I think if you look at what the Spurs are doing, outside of just an absolute blowout loss to Charlotte, which I think was more symptomatic of Charlotte without LaMelo Ball in the opener, just shooting the lights out of the gym more than anything. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, when you're capping this game, it's much more centered on the fatigue and lack of motivation from Minnesota to really throttle a team like this. And We're staying at 9.5, 10. So yeah,
that's what a good book. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's come down from 10 to 9 as well. You're definitely catching the underdog here, catching the Timberwolves in a 3rd and 4, roll back-to-back, and 4th and 6 as well. So I'm not laying the points with the Timberwolves. I just want to ask you that question. I mean, we're just making for conversation here. Yeah. Definitely could not talk you off the Spurs here, my guys.
Actually, one further point. You go back to last year, and this is just off the top of my head. I don't have this in front of me, but I do recall the Wolves at home having a lot of these back-to-back games within the Western Conference. Mm-hmm. I do recall them tanking a few of the front ends and then coming back with the juice in the second end. And I do suspect if the Spurs compete at this point tonight, I think the Wolves will turn up and potentially cover the second game in this sequence.
Yeah, that's a good point there. It definitely is a little home back-to-back there. They face the Spurs again in a couple of days, my guys. Let's go over here to the streets of Memphis here. We got the Grizzlies laying 1.5 points versus the Nets here, Shark. Obviously, the Grizzlies got absolutely smoked. We hopped on the Mavs and that way, man. They lost their game by 41 points. It's tough. Usually when a team loses, I have a rule. I don't bet against the team that gets smacked up like that. So I don't have anything on this game. I am looking towards taking the Nets in the next game, guys. So in theory, I'd like for the Grizzlies to bounce back here. I'm not betting on it, but I'm rooting for the Grizzlies. Going to watch this game. I like the Nets in a spot in their next game. So I'd like the Nets to be to lose this game. Better set up for the next game, Shark. You'd like some here? What do you think the Grizzlies going to do coming off that insulting loss, my brother?
I don't know. I think this is tough, but I do think one standout point in this game is that the Grizzlies have beaten the Nets 6 consecutive times. So you do get a lot of added motivation there. This is more than just your regular season out of conference game for Brooklyn. They're going to want to make a statement here and say, listen, guys, you're not going to beat us 7 in a row. And of course, we talked about it last year, but Brooklyn had a lot of different rosters. They had a couple trades. Guys were injured, COVID, Kyrie not playing, all sorts of stuff going on. It was disrupted. I think they're slightly less disrupted this year. And I do think if you go back to how the Grizzlies played the Knicks at home, they went to overtime and didn't cover the game. The Grizzlies right now are just kind of feeling it out early season. And, you get an adjusted number. The number is on Memphis. Brooklyn was favored in both games last year, but I don't know if that matters here. I think what you saw Memphis do against the Knicks in the first game of the season will apply here. I think Brooklyn probably does win this game tonight.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I say, Grizzlies, they don't look right now, my guys. They do not look like that same team from last year. This Nets team, they want to pile up some wins as well. It's a tough game for me, not something I'm betting. I'm rooting for Brooklyn. I'm rooting for the Brooklyn to lose this game, but also wouldn't surprise if they won it. It really doesn't matter. It's the part for the next game. I mean, if they come in with momentum, that's good. If they come in on a loss, that's even better. Me personally, I don't bet against teams that's coming off a 41-point loss, especially when you got your quality insulted. You're going to want to, especially with the Grizzlies. I mean, they do have a really good coach down there. He's going to get on their ass, say, look, guys, we got to come back with something better than that. It's a really tough game. Two tough teams. We see the Grizzlies taking a step back. Nets do to take a step forward. I don't know, man. It's a tough game for me, man. One thing I say, not betting against a team off a 40-point loss, man. So let's go over here to the streets of Chicago here, my guys. We got the Bulls getting 6 points versus the Boston Celtics here, Sharks. Celtics been absolutely on one right now. It's mainly been their fast break offense. Obviously, with the new take foul, you can't just play lazy defense. You got to get your ass back on transition defense, or fast teams like the Celtics will smoke you. But the Bulls have been getting some transition baskets as well. Here's Shark. How you looking at this one? Bulls getting 6 at the house, total of 226.
Yeah, this is a tough game, and this is actually taking on a similar environment to what we said about the Knicks and the Magic. The road team in this environment last year was 3-0 ATS. So at some point in this matchup, the home team should show up. I think it could come tonight. I think that Boston is showing signs. Boston obviously has won 3 games. They did not cover the last game. Orlando to get them, I believe, 126-120 at +7. I think they're cratering down. It's their 3rd consecutive road game. They have a few days off after this. They go back home. And I think you catch Chicago off, Jay, you were just talking about buying Memphis off an insulting loss. Chicago just got hammered by Cleveland in the previous game. So you get a bounce back. You get home game 2, which we love to buy. Obviously coming home off a road game, get comfortable. The first game, that was also a 3rd and 4 fatigue spot, road home back-to-back. Chicago obviously should come up in this environment. They did get hammered in the last game later on in the year. It was 117-94 Boston on the road on a 7.5. Line functionality does suggest Chicago. When Boston wins by margin on a 7.5, and the next line in the same gym comes down to 5, they're telling you this matchup should be tighter tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sharp. I think Chicago is well graded. I think the number is on Chicago. Free play, I am taking Chicago here.
Yeah, that's a good point. They've started out the season with 1 and 2 as well. You make a good point. First game back at the house, but they didn't have the rest advantage. They were coming in. That was a road home back to back. So it was actually a terrible spot to have your first home game. Now they've had a day off, got thumped by 32. They're getting 6 at the house. In theory, taking the name off the jerseys, guys, is not that we're disrespecting the Celtics. It's all about the spot that they're in. You don't necessarily want to lay points on the road here, especially with a third game in Fortnite. It's not a back-to-back, but still 34 all on the road, getting ready to come to the house. This is early season, guys. Celtics do the tank one. You saw it versus the Magic where they were really close to it. This Bulls team is a little bit more even with the Celtics, in my opinion, somewhat of the same type of team. I'd be looking towards Bulls plus a 6 in that game. That's the way I'd look at that game, my brothers. Let's go over here to the streets of Houston, my guys, where we got the Rockets getting a 1.5 versus the Utah Jazz. Some steam coming in on the Jazz this morning. Total sitting at 231 here, Shark. You don't agree with the steam, my brother?
I do not, and I'm going to purchase a Houston Rockets hat this afternoon for the power of positive energy as we officially are on Houston on the money line, minus 115. Of course, you get that now, plus 1.5. I wouldn't talk you off because why would I? And, what you're looking at here is, and I made the comment going back last week, and I said I think the Jazz are going to compete, and I think the Jazz have players, and they do. They're very guard heavy. They have a bunch of A-style guards. I would say Colin Sexton, obviously high draft pick. Mike Conley coming out of Ohio State 15 years ago. Crazy to say 15 years ago it was, but it has been. Malik Beasley, a couple of these other guys, they're going to grind you. And here's the environmental shift we're looking at. They just grinded 3 straight games against playoff teams and won 3 straight games as a significant underdog. Home versus Denver, 123-102. At Minnesota, overtime win, 132-126. At New Orleans last night, 122-121, overtime win. So you get a 3rd and 4 back-to-back, final leg, fatigue spot, back-to-back overtime wins, 3 consecutive outright wins as a significant underdog. You get an environmental shift in every possible environment. And you get Houston coming in here off a road blowout at Milwaukee, completely rested. Their only home game of the year was a divisional non-cover against Memphis. That does not apply to an out-of-division spot as a short dog versus a team like this. I think Houston gets their first win tonight. I think they get it with some conviction and authority here. We're on the money line, plus 1.5 now, 1 unit official.
Yeah, I couldn't talk you off. Yeah, Shark, like the minus 115, you get plus money on that money line now. You could take the 1.5. It's kind of good that the steam is coming in. I feel like it's the public coming in on the seeing that the spread is so low, right? Jazz have been they've been cashing tickets, they've been winning games straight up. Now they're laying points here on the road as opposed to getting being the underdog as well. So you got 3-0 versus 0-3 here. Couldn't talk you off the Rockets here as well. And they're 0-1 at the house. You get a 3rd and 4 and 4th and 6 plus a back-to-back for the Jazz on the road. It's a terrible spot for them. It's not saying some's guaranteed, but it's not a spot you'd like to take the Jazz, my guys. So definitely the Rockets got the rest advantage there. The Rockets been trying to ball somewhat this year as well, man. They did go up there to Milwaukee, get smacked up, so they're coming off a spot where they got blown out. It sets up well for the Rockets here, plus the 1.5, Shark. I'll tell you that. I'm riding with you, that's for sure. Last game up, man. We're going to the streets of Portland here. We got the Blazers getting 5 points versus the Nuggets here. 3 teams that was in 3rd and 4 road home back-to-backs and 4th and 6th nights, and the Blazers are another one, Shark. They do come off that game. They win versus the Lakers, and they'll win by 2. It was a tight game, went all the way down to the wire. It was an earlier type of game, though, so not as terrible as a back-to-back, Shark, but they come home here. They lost 3 out of 4 to the Nuggets last year. How you liking this game, my brother?
Oh, this is tough, and I think this is going to be a tight one. I think when we really look at the line functionality of this, the line functionality is speaking to Portland here. However, when we go back to last year, I don't remember exactly what my record in this particular environment was. I think I won 3 separate wagers scaling the line because it was very transparent stuff. You go back to the first environment last year, the Nuggets did hammer them at home 124 to 95. In that particular game, the Nuggets were laying 6.5 points. The next game came back to Portland. Portland was laying 10.5 points. So I really want to talk about this for a half second. This is the key point of line functionality, the story it tells. When the Nuggets are at home laying 6.5 points, it should be a 3-point gap going on the road. It was a 17-point gap. 17. And what happened? Portland won the game by 19 points and covered the spread by 8.5 points with emphasis. The very next game, it came from Portland minus 10.5 to Denver minus 11.5. I had that as well. I remember I was in Florida hanging out, watching, having some beers. And I remember the specific game. They came out in the first quarter, 41-28, did not look back and absolutely slaughtered this team. The line functionality here is fantastic. And then it came back on the road, 8.5, which was stock at that point, 11.5 to 8.5. This is where it starts to get more normalized. You were seeing 17 and 20-point gaps. Then you got a 3. Denver got them again. Now you go from 8.5 to 3.5. It's short by a few points. They're telling you a double revenge game for Portland. Portland did play at matinee yesterday. It shouldn't be that difficult. And again, now the gaps are getting tighter. So you're not going to see this college basketball style of line functionality exploitation. This is going to be a tight game at 3.5. It just reminds me of the game we talked about the other night where the Clippers played at Sacramento and the line was scaling against from a big number down to 3. And the Clippers won the game by 2 points. I think this game is right on the number, but the line is 100% on Portland here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, obviously the first game, the Blazers had a lot going on last year, man. Lillard in and out of the lineup. That first game where you're talking about where Portland was laying the points, they had Lillard. Then there was no Jokic in there. So then when you flip, you get Jokic in there, but then no Lillard. So the last couple games, no Lillard for Blazers. This team does seem like they're trying to turn up here somewhat. They have started out the season 3-0. This Nuggets team, they took a loss as well. They are due to come up as well, guys. I do think that the Nuggets will be a sustained bye here for at least for a little while, especially after getting their ass kicked in their first game there, my guys. So I'd still lean Nuggets here. They do have the rest advantage. It's come up from 3.5 to 5, so this line was even shorter. I could understand it being a close type of game, but I'd still lean the Nuggets here to clean them up. They always have – this is somewhat of like a rivalry. They always have bad blood versus the Blazers, man. So, but if Dame keep going for 41, this team will stay in games. I'm staying away from Blazers games right now, guys. I can tell you that you never know when they're going to turn up. You never know when they're going to revert or Dame is not hitting those threes. It'll be a long night for those guys, man. So I'd lean the Nuggets mainly with the rest advantage there, but staying off the game, sorry. Let's go ahead and talk about some shirts here, man. So, man, I'd rather talk about some shirts in these games, man, but we got $10 off shirts right now. Now is your time. You got until November 15th, my guys. Once I move, that's about it, man. $10 off shirts. Use promo code WIN10 over there at the site, or you can just hit me up, send CashApp, Venmo, and I'll send you the shirt. It's the same thing as ordering from the site, my guys. Jay and Shark, Smack City, Us Against the Bookies. Let's get some cash. One of your last opportunities to get a shirt, show some support, my guys. $10 off as well, and you get a free pair of shades. Could not talk you off there, Shark. Break them off with your official page, my brother.
Absolutely. Beautiful Monday morning. We hope everybody's having a great day. I know I call it my favorite Monday. That's mental health stuff. Because when you start to talk to yourself in a positive direction, you can make a day better than it is. And I know it's a lackluster day for a lot of people coming off a weekend, long week ahead. We're sending you guys positive vibes only. 2 top plays, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. The buy hat is engaged. I'm at plus 10. Steam is coming in on this. As I mentioned, I think Minnesota, 7 straight games to open the season against non-playoff teams, are just trying to figure it out with Rudy Gobert, moving parts. Minnesota probably wins the game. I think this is going to be a tight game down the stretch in a fatigue 3rd and 4 back-to-back for the Wolves. Same environment in the other game. We're taking the Rockets on the money line. Same thing. Jazz 3-0, 3 outright wins, back-to-back overtime wins against playoff teams as a significant underdog. You want to fade this. Houston gets their first win tonight. A beautiful Monday it is. J Money, close them out and let's dominate.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, man. Nothing official for me today, my guys. I'm taking a day off. Still doing shows, though. Top leans would be Bulls plus the 6 and the Rockets plus the 1.5, my guys. That's why I'll be looking. Aligned with Shark. Couldn't talk you off Spurs as well. Ride with the Shark, my guys. He's definitely going to get some cash today. I see those plays going 3-0, my guys. So whether I'm official or not, we're just trying to help some people get some cash here. Shark's official on the Spurs plus the 9, plus the 8.5. Rockets as well, plus the 1.5. I'm liking it, my guys. go 2-0 one time for the one time. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Hit the website, get those shirts, man. It's probably one of the last opportunities to get the shirts. Why not get $10 off? Show some support to your guy J Money and the Shark, man. Hit the like button, subscribe. We tweet the show as well. We're out, my guys. Let's get some cash. Back tomorrow.